Chapter 1 The Gleaning. The perpetual night along the coastline of western Deneta seemed to fold in on itself, a wicked canvas of deep purple, indigo, and a pervasive, endless black. The witches called this curse the Nightshawl, a void of shifting shadows and breathless silence, a darkness so deep that it devoured even the memory of stars. The undulating waves of thick mist blanketed the landscape in the far distance, casting an impenetrable void, which beckoned Kai like a trusted companion turned traitoress. The pain of its presence was as familiar as its call. After a week in the relentless glare of the wither blaze, where the star of Ryn seemed to never set, and the air shimmered with unbearable heat, the Nightshawl's gloom felt soothing in a twisted sense. Shapes danced at the edge of Kai's vision as his sight settled into the darkness. They contorted in ways he knew better than to trust. Kai steadied his breath as he pressed two fingers to his temple. "Shonis vus male dirnith," he intoned. The ancient language of the mirror flowed from his lips like a whisper through still air. As he spoke the incantation, runes made of light danced around his face before sinking into his eyes. A subtle gleam flickered across his retinas like a rippled reflection of starlight on water. Shadows peeled back, and the world sharpened with clarity. The smothering dark of the Nightshawl didn't lift, but it yielded just enough for details to emerge where there had been only indistinct forms. Cliffs carved by the restless tide, the flickering reflections of water pooling between fractured stones, and the outline of distant night animals trudging through the gloom, barely more than silhouettes against the eternal twilight. The only light he could trust in the shadowed expanse came from faint and fragile sources. The glow of bioluminescent plants and fungi clinging stubbornly to the rocks, the flicker of fishermen's lanterns far along the shore, or, scattered across the coast in either direction, the defiant radiance spilling from small villages. Combined, their soft illumination pulsed weakly against the Nightshawl like the slow, feeble breath of a dying man, quiet and resigned. Kai's gaze settled on the points of light. Their fragile persistence stirred something deep within, a sense of home. He'd grown up beneath this curse and learned to move through the blackness that sent others screaming into madness. But Kai had never feared the Nightshawl. Here, he could slip between the shadows until he became one, unseen and unknown. And now, he had another accolade. He'd done it. At just 17 cycles of age, he crossed from one cursed realm into another, unscathed. The youngest runner to make the crossing. The thought sang through him with every step. His boots crunched over salt-weathered stones and brittle weeds, each footfall echoing louder than it should. He knew better. The Nightshawl demanded you move like a part of the dark itself. But his chest was still full of triumph, and his legs were still restless with the memory of the dunes. His boot caught on a jutting root. He stumbled forward, arms flailing for balance he should have never lost. A shadow-trained runner, tripping like a common fool. Heat flashed through his face even as he righted himself, pulse hammering in the sudden quiet. The darkness pressed closer, like the Nightshawl had noticed his stumble and decided he was prey. He forced himself still, with feet firmly planted. The curse fed on panicked movements. He'd seen what happened to those who lost themselves out here. Their minds went first, then their bodies, until the darkness claimed them both. The Nightshawl was a slow and opportunistic hunter. Kai waited until the curse eased, then moved forward with deliberate care. One step, another, the way he'd been taught. The lights of darkest veil appeared through the gloom, Lanterns hung low from weathered posts, their flames dimmed through the enchantments that cast faint halos of light. His shoulders dropped before he could stop them, relief he hadn't earned, not after stumbling like an idiot. Still, passing the cricket gate meant home, and faces that, however worn and wary, still recognized him. He adjusted the satchel of stolen goods at his hip and slipped through the gate. The warding runes prickled against his skin, and the feeling of them faded as quickly as it came. Protective magic. Barely enough to keep the worst of the Nightshawl at bay, but enough. Where was everyone? The market stalls stood shuttered. No voices haggling over thread or dried meat. No children darting between crates, shrieking with laughter the way they always did when the Nightshawl's oppressive weight lifted each churn. The only sound was his boots scraping against cobblestone. Kai slowed, scanning the darkened shop fronts, the smithy, door barred, the textile merchant's storefront, empty, fabric bolts still visible through the murky window, but no one tending the shop. Even the old tavern sat dark, and that place never closed, not unless something was deeply wrong. His pulse kicked up. He cut toward the center of the village, moving faster now, the satchel bouncing against his hip. A modest house came into view, weathered wood, sagging roof, a single window glowing faint orange against the gloom. Mother's house. The door groaned as he pushed it open. "Mother, are you home?" he called. Footsteps. Then came her voice, sharp with surprise. "Kai?" She appeared from the back room, wiping her hands on her apron, and stopped short when she saw him. For a heartbeat, she just stared, like she was making sure he was real. Then her face finally broke into relief mixed with exasperation. 3 months without a word, and you just walk in like... She crossed the room and gripped his shoulders, eyes already scanning him for injury. "You're taller, thinner. Has Korik been feeding you?" "I'm fine." He couldn't help the grin tugging at his mouth. "Better than fine. I crossed it, Mother. The Witherblaze." Her hands went still. "You crossed over? Truly?" He nodded and unslung his pack, pulling free a cloth-wrapped bundle. When he peeled back the fabric, faint light spilled across the dim room, pale and gold, almost ghostly. Priscillium. Enough to repair the village wards and share with the outlying settlements. Mother reached toward it, then hesitated. Her fingers hovered just above the powder. When she finally touched it, her hand trembled. "You're following your father's path. He would have been so proud of you, Kai." Heat crawled up his neck. He looked away, focusing on rewrapping the bundle with more care than necessary. Someone had to gather it. The wards won't hold without fresh dust." Not following father's path, he thought. Not trying to be like him. Just doing what needed doing. "Where is everyone?" he asked, steering away from the subject before she could press. "The village. It's empty." Mother moved to the hearth and set a kettle over the coals. "We're still here, but people don't go out unless they must." "What happened?" She didn't look at him when she answered. "There have been shadows in the forest. Voidkin. They move along the ward line. They've set everyone on edge. People don't want to take any chances since those beasts killed." She stopped herself, but they both knew what she meant. She meant Nia. Kai's jaw clenched. How many?" "Hard to say. They don't come close enough to count. Just prowl, like they're waiting for something." She finally met his eyes. "Or waiting for orders." Orders from the witches. Even thinking about them made his skin crawl. There were 5 of them, locked away in their tower at the heart of the Nightshawl, pulling strings on everything twisted and wrong in this realm. The Voidkin served them, hollow, hungry extensions of their master's will. Everyone went about their lives, but they knew the witches were still there, watching and scheming, sending their creatures to do what they couldn't or wouldn't do themselves. "How long have they been out there?" Kai asked. "Tonight is the 5th churn they've been out there. The wards are holding, for now." Yeah, for now, he thought. The dust in his pack suddenly felt heavier. Essential. "I brought enough to reinforce them," he said. "We can rest, Kai." Her voice left no room for argument. "Sit, eat. Whatever the witches are doing, it'll still be there in the next churn." Kai unclasped his cloak and hung it by the door. The protective runes stitched along the hem were barely visible anymore, frayed to threads. He set his metal dagger on the wall rack and bent to unlace his boots. Cracked leather, soles worn thin enough to feel every stone. When he straightened, Mother was watching him. Her eyes tracked the scorch marks on his sleeves and the patched knees of his breeches. He hadn't noticed before, but his tunic hung loose where it used to fit. Mother was right. He had grown thin. "Your clothes look like they've just been set ablaze," she said. He glanced down and shrugged. "Just a little," he replied. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I suppose clothes can be mended." She crossed to his pack and gestured for him to follow. "You, on the other hand, need food. But first, let's see this dust. I'll need to mill it finer before you take it to Korik." Kai's stomach then chose that moment to growl, loud enough that Mother raised an eyebrow. "Ah, food first then," she said. Later, when the veil descended, Kai lay in his old bed, staring at the runes Father had carved into the ceiling beams cycles ago and smeared persilium into. Simple wards. Beginner work, really. He could carve out better ones now if he wanted to. The room smelled like wood smoke and dried herbs. He imagined the room always smelled like that, even when he used to occupy the old cot that still sat in the corner of the room. He should visit more. Mother was alone here, keeping this house standing through sheer will, and he had been gone nearly 100 churns this time. 3 months. Far too long. The look on her face when he'd walked through that door. Relief. Then that flicker of hurt she tried to hide. "You're following your father's path," he recalled her saying. His jaw clenched visibly. Father had gone after the witches, driven by rage, by vengeance, by the need to make them pay for what they'd done to his family. And they had torn him apart for it. Was that what Kai was doing? Becoming a Rune Runner? Chasing the same anger? Heading towards the same end? He forced out a breath he had been holding and forced his shoulders to relax against the mattress. 5 cycles. That's all the experience he had so far in mirror magic. Korik said true mastery took a decade, maybe more. But with his eidetic memory, Kai was faster than most. He'd crossed the 9-fold fracture at 17. Youngest ever. That had to count for something. And one of only 2 men in the world that could be Rune Runners. 3, if Father was still alive. Father had been skilled too, but skill hadn't saved him. Kai closed his eyes. The warmth of the blankets pressed against his skin, but his mind pulled him elsewhere, back to the Witherblaze, the sun hammering down as he knelt in the sand, sifting persilium through the sieve. Heat rippling in the air, grains glittering as they fell. A figure stood at the edge of his vision, motionless against the glare, barely a silhouette. Kai blinked as the figure grew more defined. His chest went tight. Nia? What in the abyss? Dark hair, wild and tangled, big brown eyes bright with that look she always got when she was about to do something reckless. 11 cycles old, wearing the faded tunic she died in. "You can't possibly be here," he whispered. "You're dead." She tilted her head with a smile curling at the edges. She rested her fists against her hips. Silly baby boy. Her voice echoed, layered and strange. The sand beneath his boots dissolved. He was running. When had he started running? The Witherblaze was gone. Trees now, dense, twisting. The forest of Darknest, around their hometown, pressing close. Shadows stretched too long, angling in directions the light shouldn't allow. Nia darted ahead, her feet barely touching the ground. Nia! His throat burned with the shout. Stop! She didn't turn or slow. She just kept running, slipping between the trees like smoke, always just out of reach. The air went cold. The shadows thickened, pooling between the trunks. Movement in the dark. Voidkin. They emerged from nothing as if birthed by the darkness itself, swirling vortices of indigo and black, their edges flickering like the tongues of dying fire. Their forms refused to stay fixed, shifting between the semblance of a beast and something far more grotesque. Spindly limbs melted into the haze of their bodies, only to reform elsewhere. Eyes. Dozens of them. They were emerald and sickly bright, scattered across their bodies in no particular pattern. The air vanished from Kai's lungs. He couldn't breathe. The Voidkin scraped forward, chittering, clicking, making sounds like nails against marble. The world around them dimmed, like they were sucking what little light there was out of everything. One lunged forward, too fast, and its claws locked around Nia's arm. She screamed. Nia! Kai's legs wouldn't move. He was rooted to the ground, watching as the thing dragged her backward into the shadows. No! Nia! She twisted, fighting against its clasp, but more Voidkin swarmed around her, their shapes blurring together into a mass of writhing darkness. Her eyes found his, wide and terrified. Kai! Her voice broke. Darkness can't hold us forever! The shadow swallowed her whole. Gone. The forest went silent. No chittering. No wind. Only Kai, standing alone in Darknest Forest, his sister's scream still echoing in his ears. Kai jolted awake, gasping. His chest heaved, sweat soaking through his tunic. He pressed the heels of his palms against his eyes until colors bloomed in the darkness. Just a dream, he thought. The same dream. Always the same. But his hands were still shaking. He sat up, forcing his breath to slow. Outside the window, the veil had given way to the churn. Though, under the Nightshawl, the difference was barely visible. Just a subtle shift in the quality of darkness, a faint easing of pressure against the wards. Kai reached for his pouch and pulled out a vial of Presilium dust. He pinched a few grains between his fingers, then he traced a series of protective runes across his forearms. The symbols turned amber and sank into his skin. A warm readiness spread through his body. He dressed quickly and stepped into the hall. The hearth was already lit. Mother sat at the table tying leather pouches filled with the refined dust he'd brought back. Her fingers shimmered faintly with residue, and the smell of fresh broth and bread cut through the wood smoke. You're up early, she said without looking up. Kai pulled out a chair and sat. Couldn't sleep, he said. She nodded and gestured toward the plate she'd set out, with bread, cured fish, and root vegetables. Eat. You'll need your strength. He didn't argue. Kai took a piece of bread as Mother settled the pouches into his satchel. Korik will want these distributed to the settlements around Evergloom Bay, she said. They're running low, and without dust, the Voidkin might... Kai nodded, chewing slowly. No need to finish that, Mother. I'll handle it. Silence settled between them. Mother's hands moved methodically, packing his satchel, checking the straps. Finally, without looking up, she said, Was it the same dream? Kai swallowed his bite. Yeah, it was. Mother's hands went still. She pulled the satchel closed and sat down across from him, folding her hands on the table. I dream about her too. Her voice was quiet. I see you running to tell me that she's gone. I hear your father's grief. Sometimes I see her face. She's asking me to let her go. Kai looked up, startled. You never told me. What good would it do? She said, Mother's mouth pressed into a thin line. Dreams don't change what happened. Sharing them won't bring her back. But yours aren't just grief, are they? Kai's fingers curled against the table. Darkness can't hold us forever. Nia's voice, clear as if she'd just spoken. He carved those very words into every protection rune he made. He even whispered the words like a benediction when the Nightshawl pressed close. These dreams, they feel real, he said quietly. Like a calling. Mother's hands covered his. Then maybe they are. She squeezed once, then let go. But real or not, you're still here. And there are people who need you alive, not chasing shadows. Kai nodded. His throat felt tight. He pushed his plate aside and reached for his satchel. I should get the dust to Korik. Kai, Mother called. Yes, Mother? How did you get across? The Witherblades, that is. He paused, hand on the strap. Father's journal. There was an incantation in his notes. It took me months with Korik to understand the magic behind it, but it worked. Mother went very still. You still have his journal? Yeah. Something in her expression made him hesitate. It's how I've learned so quickly. She stared at him for a long moment, something unreadable passing across her face. Then she held out her hand. Can you show me, before you go? Kai stepped back and pinched a measure of dust between his fingers. He began to trace concentric circles, one layered over another, each symbol precise and intricate in its detail. The dust hung suspended in the air, glowing faintly as the runes took shape. When the final mark settled into place, the whole construct shone with amber light. Mother leaned forward, studying the pattern. What does it mean? Laikis vus kalapkael. The old tongue felt natural on his lips. It means to illuminate the precise path forward. The center rune flared. A mote of light burst free, zipping across the floor like a living thing. It left a glowing trail behind it as it slipped beneath the door and disappeared into the Nightshawl. Your father spoke of that rune often. He said it never led him astray, but it also showed him paths no one else would dare to take. Like the path to vengeance? Kai asked. She nodded. Just be certain that the path it shows you is the one that you're prepared to walk. Don't follow it blindly. The magic hasn't failed me yet. Kai grabbed his satchel and moved toward the door. This one, at least, will lead me to Korik at Glum's End. Mother followed him, touching Kai's arm with her palm. He turned to face her. Take care of yourself, Kai. Her hands rested on his shoulders, and for a moment she just looked at him as if she were searching or studying his features. And when you see Korik, tell him to come home. He's still family, no matter how long it's been. Kai blinked. I'll tell him. Good. She squeezed his shoulders once, then let go. I love you. I love you too. He hesitated, then turned and stepped into the Nightshawl. The warded lanterns of Darkest Vale flickered behind him, their light dying as the darkness swallowed the distance. The guiding rune darted ahead, leaving a glowing trail of Prizmir that wound southward toward the craggy steps of Evergloom Bay. Kai followed, boots crunching over the dried soil. The chittering came from somewhere to his left, and Kai stopped, listened. Faint. Almost too quiet to catch. But it was there, layered, rhythmic, the sound Voidkin made when they were hunting. His hand drifted towards his dagger. The noise echoed once more, then faded into the depths of the Nightshawl, not hunting him. The prismatic trail sheened brighter, urging him forward. Kai continued, though his hand still lingered near his dagger just in case. Mother's words pressed against his thoughts. Be certain the path it shows is one that you're ready to walk. He looked at the glowing line stretched into the dark. He turned to study the shadows on either side, where the chittering had come from. The rune showed him the way to Korik. That didn't mean it was safe. It just meant it was a way. And it was his choice to take it. Kai's grip finally loosened on the sheathed dagger. But he never fully dropped his defense, keeping his eyes on the darkness around him as much as the light ahead.